Okay, I can't believe I'm making a video about this, but this grabbed my attention for some reason and I feel like I want to reply. So I get way more traction on YouTube than I do on TikTok. My content has been heavily suppressed on TikTok ever since the United Healthcare shooter incident. But my YouTube is flourishing and I get a tremendous amount of engagement there. I often have 10,000 comments a day. So unfortunately, I can no longer read all of, much less moderate all of the comments I get on my videos in a given day. But I do try to take some time and scroll through some of them, usually when I'm having my coffee in the morning or late at night when I have insomnia. But oftentimes people will leave a couple dozen comments. Sometimes it's more than 100 before I see the very first thing that they've said, right? So I can see from the YouTube studio side, I can see that they've left a comment and then I click on their name and it will say 100 plus comments on your channel or 19 comments on your channel. And then I can click and see what else they've commented over the last months or years. So it wasn't actually me who stumbled on this comment. It was my husband. Y'all, he's like my biggest super fan. He watches all my videos, even though I tell him he doesn't need to do that. And he will frequently thumb through the comments for a few minutes and reply to one or two a day. Which again, I keep telling him he doesn't have to do that. Anyway, so he found this comment before I did and he was like, "Did you see this comment?" I was like, probably not, because there's a bazillion of them. And he was like, "Well, it's really funny because he called you a honeypot for the alt-right." And I was like, what? So I went and looked up the comment. So this comment was on one of my videos where I was talking about the falling birth rate in the United States and how that's not actually a good thing. And how when we see low birth rates in countries, especially European countries, but also in South Korea and in Japan, we also see heavily exploited migrant labor because when you have an aging population, you have to get those laborers from somewhere. You need those people to contribute to your economy, and you end up bringing in migrant labor that is often very heavily exploited. And so I was saying, when you have low birth rates in white countries, you end up putting the burden on the global majority to do the reproducing and then also to provide cheap labor for your country. And so I was saying, if there's any time that we need intersectionality, it's when we're looking at population dynamics and the negative and positive consequences for people beyond yourself. So in that context, this dude said, definitely don't look into all of the European countries that are freer than the US, provide more robust social safety nets than the US, better education than the US, and plenty more hope for the future, and have lower birth rates than the US. It was just like a big whoosh for this guy. Yeah, those countries all have issues with exploiting migrant labor. The burden is still being put on women. It's just not being put on white women in those countries. It's being put on women of the global majority in other countries. And y'all are reaping the benefits. But of course, this chucklefuck willfully misinterpreted that to mean that I'm a pro-natalist or some shit. I don't know. This is the part I really want to get to. He said, "Are some of y'all realizing this channel isn't left-wing or progressive in the slightest? It's a honeypot. Say the right things, get an audience in, slowly drip right-wing talking points." Oh, like unschooling. Okay, you clearly don't know what unschooling is to the audience. Once enough of the right people are drawn in, the mask can come off. I said go kick rocks, but I wanted to say a lot of other stuff. So when I clicked on his name, he had left a whole other string of comments like this, claiming that I am some psyop for the alt-right and claiming that I am some secret agent who's trying to draw in leftists and progressives and slowly convert them to the alt-right. Motherfucker, you think I'm an alt-right pipeline? First of all, you don't know what a psyop is. If you think a psyop is one person making content on social media, you don't fucking know what a psyop is, and you should stop using that term. Also, clearly, this idiot doesn't know what unschooling is. Unschooling is a movement largely driven by progressive, leftist, non-religious folks who are looking to decolonize education. Right, I've talked extensively about how unschooling is an educational model that decolonizes learning and also supports children's autonomy. And so, of course, he didn't bother to do his due diligence and actually learn what unschooling is. He just ignorantly assumed it's fundy homeschooling. I mean, obviously it's super embarrassing for that guy that he's created his own personal conspiracy theory about me in his head. And he's blathering about it all in my comments section, hoping other people will pick it up as well. But the main thing I actually wanted to talk about is something that's been a theme of the last few days, which is how men on the left really, really need to work at unpacking their misogyny. They really, really need to look at the ways they were drawn into leftist politics because they're mad about capitalism. Capitalism has injured them. And so they have moved to the political left in order to find some reprieve from that, to find an alternative. They are on the left because capitalism hurt them, not because the patriarchy did, not because white supremacy did. And I've said repeatedly the number of times I have had to interact with men on the left who do not understand the tremendous amount of casual misogyny that they wield on a daily basis and why women do not feel safe around them. Like sometimes I wonder whether or not they actually are unaware of how misogynistic they're being, or they just don't give a shit. They're just so angry at capitalism. I mean, me as well, my dude, me as well. But they aren't knowingly negatively impacted by those other systems of oppression. And so they just don't really care to deconstruct from them very much, or they feel entitled to their misogyny. I have seen men on the left feel entitled to be terrible to women who they think have different politics than they do, right? Either women that are on the left that they want to call a centrist lib because they don't like what we have to say, or women that are politically on the right. The number of times that I've seen men on the left feel free to fantasize about violence against those women, to call those women horrific names, and to make open threats against those women. It just shows me that men on the left have a lot of work to do. And so in particular, this comment here, what drew me in and why I really wanted to talk about it, is that he called me a honeypot. This is a man who has proclaimed himself to be a leftist, who called a woman a honeypot, which is just like the most disgustingly misogynistic thing to say. I'm not some siren that's luring men into their political demise, corrupting them and converting them to the alt-right. I mean, I understand that men can be led around by their dicks, and maybe y'all want to examine why that's so easily done. But calling women that you don't like a honeypot, honestly, it's giving the same energy as Donald Trump saying, grab them by the kitty cat. Like, you just want to reduce women down to what? To what? So while obviously I block that, bro, I wanted to bring this up because it's just something that I think maybe y'all dudes are oblivious to it, but women in progressive and leftist spaces, we are highly aware of it. And like, if your goal is really community, if your goal is to create a more just society, I mean, you talk an awful good talk about it. And I know that a lot of men on the left seem to think that they don't have a problem, or the left itself doesn't have a problem with misogyny. But what has happened with Lolo over the last several days, and the number of women I have seen get on this app and get on Blue Sky and talk about how they have been harmed by men on the left, the kind of casual misogyny, but also the kind of overt harassment and discrimination they have faced, the kind of objectification, the kind of brutal language that has been employed against women by men on the left. Like, y'all have a lot of work to do. You have a lot of work to do. Just like all of us that are white have a tremendous amount of work to do when it comes to deconstructing from our racism. Just like everybody who's able-bodied on the left has a tremendous amount of work to do deconstructing from your ableism. Just like all of us adults on the left have a lot of work to do deconstructing from our childism, our loathing of children that we have been indoctrinated with since we ourselves were kids. Just because you have thoroughly deconstructed from the capitalist imperialist indoctrination of the United States, that doesn't mean that your work is done, and it actually doesn't mean that you're ready to build the kind of society that you claim to advocate for.